Moscow, February 1978. The temperature was minus 15 degrees Celsius, but inside the central house of chess, the atmosphere was even colder. Muhammad Ali, the heavyweight champion of the world, sat across from Anatoly Karpov, the world chess champion, in what was supposed to be a friendly exhibition match. For moves into the game, Ali did something that would be talked about in the Kremlin for decades. He swept his hand across the board, scattering pieces across the polished wood floor, looked Karpov directly in the eyes, and said 6 words that would appear in KGB reports within 24 hours. This game is not real life. Before we continue with what happened in that Moscow hall, if you're enjoying this story of when physical strength met intellectual power, hit that like button and subscribe. And here's a question for you. Do you think challenging the Soviet system through a chess game took more courage than facing any opponent in the ring? Drop your answer in the comments. I read every single one. The Cold War was at its peak in 1978. The United States and the Soviet Union weren't just competing in arms races and space exploration. They were competing in everything: sports, culture, and intellectual superiority. Chess was the Soviet Union's pride. They dominated the game completely. Soviet chess players weren't just athletes. They were symbols of communist intellectual superiority, proof that the Soviet system produced the world's greatest minds. Muhammad Ali wasn't supposed to be in Moscow at all. His passport had been flagged by both American and Soviet intelligence agencies. The CIA considered him a political risk after his stance on Vietnam. The KGB considered him dangerous because of his influence on people, especially young people who questioned authority. But Ali had been invited by the Soviet Sports Committee as part of a cultural exchange program, and both governments reluctantly approved the visit, though neither was happy about it. Ali arrived in Moscow on February 12, 1978, accompanied by his wife Veronica, his trainer Angelo Dundee, and his longtime friend and photographer Howard Bingham. The moment his plane touched down at Sheremetyevo Airport, Ali knew he was being watched. There were men in long coats standing at every corner, trying and failing to look casual. They weren't there to welcome him. Mohammed, Angelo Dundee, said quietly as they walked through the airport, "I count at least 6 guys following us." Ali smiled that famous smile. "Only 6. I must be losing my touch." But Ali wasn't smiling on the inside. He'd been briefed before leaving the United States. The State Department had been very clear. This was not a tourist visit. Every word he said would be monitored. Every person he met would be vetted. And under no circumstances should he discuss politics, religion, or anything that could be used as propaganda by either side. The official reason for Ali's visit was to attend the Soviet boxing championships and meet with Soviet athletes. But on his second day in Moscow, something unexpected happened. A representative from the Soviet Sports Committee approached Ali's hotel room with an unusual request. "Mr. Ali," the man said in heavily accented English, "the world chess champion Anatoly Karpov has heard you are in Moscow. He would like to invite you to the Central House of Chess tomorrow for a friendly game." Ali looked at Angelo, who shrugged. "Why not?" Ali said, "I've never played a world champion before, but I should tell you, I'm not very good at chess." The representative smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. "That is understood. This is just for photographs. Cultural exchange. Soviet Union and America. Friendship through sports." But that wasn't what this was about. Not really. The KGB had been tracking Ali's movements since he'd landed. They'd listened to his conversations, read his letters, and monitored his phone calls. They knew Ali wasn't just an athlete. He was a symbol of resistance, someone who'd stood up to the most powerful government in the world and won. The Soviet system couldn't allow that kind of symbolism to go unchallenged. The chess match was a setup, a carefully orchestrated piece of Cold War propaganda. The plan was simple. Anatoly Karpov, the pride of Soviet intellectualism, would play a friendly game with Muhammad Ali, the American boxer. Ali would lose quickly, gracefully. The photographs would be published in Soviet newspapers with a caption, "Even the greatest American athlete cannot compete with Soviet intellectual superiority." What the KGB didn't account for was that Muhammad Ali never followed anyone's script but his own. The next day, February 14th, Valentine's Day, Ollie arrived at the Central House of Chess in central Moscow. The building was impressive, a Soviet-era structure of stone and glass, imposing and cold. Inside, the main hall had been prepared like a stage. Cameras lined the walls. Soviet journalists filled the seats. And at the center, a single chessboard sat on an elevated platform under bright lights. Anatoly Karpov was already seated when Ollie entered. Karpov was 26 years old, thin, pale, with wire-rimmed glasses and an expression that revealed nothing. He'd been world chess champion since 1975 and had never lost a match that mattered. He represented everything the Soviet system wanted to project: discipline, intelligence, absolute control. Ollie approached the board slowly. He was wearing a dark suit, looking every bit the distinguished visitor. But his eyes were taking in everything: the cameras, the crowd, the officials standing near the walls. He recognized the setup immediately. This wasn't a friendly game. This was theater. "Mr. Ollie," Karpov said in English, standing to shake hands. His handshake was cold, formal. "It is an honor to meet the boxing champion." "The honor's mine," Ollie replied. "Though I should warn you, I'm better with my fist than my brain." A few people in the audience laughed nervously. In the Soviet Union, you didn't make jokes that suggested physical superiority over intellectual achievement. The officials near the walls shifted uncomfortably. They sat down. The board was set. Karpov had white pieces, so he moved first. A standard opening, pawn to e4. Ollie studied the board for a moment, then moved his pawn to e5. Basic, textbook response. The photographers rushed forward, cameras flashing. This was the shot they wanted. The great Muhammad Ali, humbled before Soviet genius, studying a chessboard like a confused child, while the brilliant Karpov looked on with patient superiority. Karpov made his second move, knight to f3. Ollie responded with knight to c6. The game was following the most basic opening in chess, something any beginner would know. Karpov made his third move, bishop to c4, the famous Italian game opening. That's when something changed in Ali's eyes. He looked up from the board, past Karpov, at the officials, at the cameras, at the journalists scribbling notes for their propaganda pieces. He looked back at Karpov and asked a question that wasn't part of anyone's script. "Do you love this game?" Karpov blinked, confused. Yes, of course. Chess is everything to me." "Everything?" Ollie pressed. "Your whole life? Your whole identity? You are chess, and chess is you." "Yes," Karpov said slowly, uncertain where this was going. "Chess is my life." Ollie nodded thoughtfully, then made his third move. Pawn to d6. A defensive setup. Karpov responded quickly, almost dismissively, with castling kingside. It was clear he was playing on autopilot, expecting Ollie to resign in a few moves. That's when Ollie made his fourth and final move in the game. He moved his bishop to g4, attacking Karpov's knight. But before Karpov could respond, before anyone could process what was happening, Muhammad Ali did something unprecedented. He stood up. He reached across the board, and he swept his arm across the pieces, scattering them across the platform, onto the floor, into the stunned silence of the hall. The sound of chess pieces hitting the floor was the only sound in the entire building. 32 pieces, 16 white and 16 black, bouncing and rolling across polished wood while 200 people sat frozen in absolute shock. Karpov's mouth opened slightly. The officials near the walls moved forward, then stopped, unsure what to do. The photographers kept shooting, capturing the moment that would never be published in any Soviet newspaper. Ollie remained standing, looking down at Karpov, who was still seated, staring at the scattered pieces with an expression that might have been horror or might have been something else entirely. "This game is not real life," Ollie said, his voice clear and strong enough to reach every corner of the silent hall. "In chess, you plan 20 moves ahead. You calculate every possibility. You control every piece. But life isn't like that. In life, you can't control everything. You can't predict everything. And the moment you think you can, the board gets flipped." The silence was suffocating. An official in a dark suit began walking toward the platform, but Karpov held up his hand, stopping him. The chess champion stood up slowly, facing Ollie across the destroy board. "You came here to embarrass me," Karpov said quietly, but Ollie could hear the anger underneath. "To embarrass the Soviet Union." "No," Ollie replied. "I came here because you invited me to play a game. But this isn't a game. This is propaganda. You were supposed to beat me quickly, easily. The cameras would show the dumb American boxer humiliated by Soviet genius. And tomorrow's Pravda would have a headline about intellectual superiority. Isn't that right?" Karpov's silence was confirmation enough. His eyes flicked to the officials, then back to Ollie. "You're right," Karpov said, so quietly that only Ollie could hear. "But I didn't have a choice. In the Soviet Union, you don't refuse when the state committee asks you to do something." Ollie's expression softened. "I know something about governments asking you to do things you don't want to do. I spent 3 years in exile because I refused. Lost millions of dollars. Lost my title. But I kept my soul." He stepped around the table, closer to Karpov, ignoring the officials who were now definitely moving toward them. "Let me ask you again," Ollie said. "Do you love chess? Really love it? Or do you love it because it's the only thing they allow you to love? Because it's safe? Because it doesn't threaten the system?" Karpov's face had gone pale. "You don't understand what you're asking. You're American. You're free. You can say what you want, believe what you want. Here, it's different. Is it?" Ollie asked. "Or is that just what they want you to think? You're the world chess champion. You're famous across the globe. You have a platform, a voice. What if you used it?" An official reached the platform, followed by two others. One of them, a senior-looking man with medals on his chest, addressed Ollie in English. "Mr. Ollie, this exhibition is concluded. We ask that you leave immediately." Ollie ignored him, keeping his eyes on Karpov. "In 1967, I refused to go to Vietnam. You know what the government called me? A traitor. A coward. They said I was unpatriotic, that I was a disgrace. But I knew something they didn't. I knew that real courage isn't about fighting the enemies they choose for you. It's about knowing when to refuse to fight at all." "Mr. Ollie," the official said more firmly, "you must leave now." Ollie finally looked at the official. "I'm leaving. But first, I want Mr. Karpov here to understand something. This game we just played, these pieces on the floor, this is what life does to your careful plans. You could be the smartest person in the room, the most calculating, the most prepared. And then something unexpected happens, and all your preparation means nothing. The only thing that matters is how you respond to the chaos." He turned back to Karpov one last time. "You're brilliant at chess because you can see the whole board, anticipate every move, control every piece. But when was the last time someone flipped the board on you? When was the last time you had to respond to something you didn't plan for? That's where real genius lives. Not in control, but in adaptation." The officials were surrounding Ollie now, gently but firmly guiding him away from the platform. But Karpov spoke, stopping everyone. "Wait." The officials froze. Karpov stepped forward, past the scattered chess pieces, until he was standing directly in front of Ollie. "What would you have me do?" Karpov asked, and his voice was different now. Vulnerable. Real. "If I speak out, I lose everything. My title, my career, maybe my freedom. What did your courage cost you, Mr. Ollie?" Ollie smiled. Not a showman smile, but something genuine. "Everything. It cost me everything. And it gave me everything. Because when you stand for something real, when you refuse to be controlled, you lose all the fake things and gain the only thing that matters. Yourself." "That's easy for you to say," Karpov replied. "You're Muhammad Ali. You're famous enough to survive, defying your government. I'm just a chess player." "No," Ali said firmly. "You're the world chess champion. You're proof that the human mind can achieve greatness. And greatness isn't just about winning games. It's about knowing when the game itself is wrong." The moment hung in the air between them. Then Karpov did something that would be noted in KGB reports as unprecedented and concerning. He bent down, picked up the white king from where it had fallen, and handed it to Ollie. "Keep this," Karpov said, "to remember the day someone flipped my board." Ollie took the piece, turned it over in his hand, then handed it back. "You keep it, to remember the day you realized your board could be flipped." Muhammad Ali was escorted out of the Central House of Chess immediately afterward. The entire incident was suppressed by Soviet media. Not a single photograph was published, but the story spread anyway, the way forbidden stories always do. Within days, dissidents in Moscow were talking about the American boxer who challenged Soviet authority by destroying a chess game. Within weeks, the story had reached Washington, where State Department officials were simultaneously furious at the diplomatic incident and secretly pleased that Ali had gotten under the Soviet skin. What happened next would take years to fully emerge. Anatoly Karpov remained world chess champion until 1985. He never publicly spoke about the incident with Ali, but people close to him noticed changes. He became less controlled in interviews, more willing to express opinions that diverged from official Soviet positions. In 1987, during the early years of Glasnost, Karpov gave an interview to a Western journalist where he said something cryptic. Sometimes the most important lessons come from people who don't play your game. When asked to elaborate, he smiled and said, "Let's just say I once met someone who taught me that the board is just wood, but what you do when it's overturned, that's real." The KGB file on Muhammad Ali's visit to Moscow remained classified for decades. When portions of it were finally released in the late 1990s, researchers found an interesting note attached to the report about the chess incident. It read, "Subject Ali displayed textbook desinformatia resistance, refused all scripted scenarios, transformed controlled propaganda event into ideological challenge. Recommend avoiding future cultural exchanges with individuals who cannot be controlled through standard protocol." In other words, even the KGB admitted that Ali had won. Muhammad Ali never spoke publicly about the Moscow chess match during the Cold War. But in 1992, after the Soviet Union had collapsed, a journalist asked him about it. Ali, his speech already slowed by Parkinson's, took his time answering. "I didn't flip that board to disrespect chess," he said carefully. "I flipped it because they were using chess to play a different game. A game about power and control and proving one system is better than another. And I wanted Karpov to know that he didn't have to be a piece in their game. He could be himself." "Did you think you'd change anything?" the journalist asked. Ali smiled. "I don't know if I changed anything, but I know I tried. And trying matters." The White King that Karpov had picked up that day in Moscow disappeared into history. Some say he kept it. Others say it was confiscated by the KGB. But there's a persistent rumor among chess collectors that in 1989, just before the Berlin Wall fell, an anonymous donor gave a single chess piece to the Smithsonian Museum with a note attached. The note read, "From Moscow, 1978. The day I learned that some games aren't worth playing." The handwriting was never confirmed, but experts believe it was Anatoly Karpov's. Today, if you visit the Central House of Chess in Moscow, there's no plaque, no memorial, no mention of February 14th, 1978. The Soviet Union was very good at erasing history it didn't like. But erasing events doesn't erase their impact. The story of the day Muhammad Ali flipped Anatoly Karpov's chessboard became legend among dissidents, intellectuals, and anyone who understood that sometimes the most revolutionary act is refusing to play by rules designed to keep you controlled. Because Muhammad Ali didn't go to Moscow to win a chess game. He went to win something far more important. A reminder that human beings aren't chess pieces, that life isn't a game with predetermined moves, and that the most powerful thing anyone can do is overturn the board and force everyone to see reality without its carefully arranged pieces. Anatoly Karpov is still alive today. He's at 72 years old, a legend in the chess world, respected globally. And according to people who know him, he keeps a single chess piece in his office. A White King. When people ask about it, he simply says, "It reminds me that the game is never as important as the person playing it." If this story of intellectual courage meeting physical courage inspired you, share it with someone who needs to remember that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is refuse to play a rigged game. Because Muhammad Ali didn't just float like a butterfly and sting like a bee in the boxing ring. He did it in Moscow, in a chess hall, surrounded by Soviet officials and KGB agents, where one sweeping motion of his hand, reminded the world that real champions don't just win games, they change them.